You step into the bar, the kind of dive where the air feels thick with tension. The low hum of conversation, mixed with the clink of glasses, barely registers. But there's something off tonight. You can feel it. The eyes of the patrons dart nervously from the corner where a woman in a wheelchair sits. She's small, fragile, her frailty emphasized by the large, intimidating group standing around her. The gangsters don't seem to care about the quiet, unsure stares of those around them. They've cornered her, their insults laced with cruelty. Every word feels like a punch, landing without mercy. You can tell they don't just want her to be afraid. They want her broken. You didn't plan to get involved. You were here for a drink, just trying to wind down after a long week, but the situation feels different. The woman's face is flushed with humiliation. Her hands tremble on her lap, and her eyes avoid the smirks of the men towering over her. You glance at the other people in the bar. No one's stepping in. It's like they've all been conditioned to look away, to pretend this isn't happening. But you can't just stand there, right? Suddenly, one of the gangsters shoves her chair, rocking her back and forth. A low chuckle escapes his lips as he taunts her once more. The others join in, closing in on her from all sides, laughing and pushing her deeper into the corner. That's when you feel it, a thick, suffocating pressure in your chest. You know something's about to happen, something that's going to change everything. This wasn't supposed to be your fight, but now it feels like it is. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment below with your location and local time. Let's see where you're tuning in from. You take a step forward, weighing the risk of intervening. It's a tough call. If you make a scene, who knows what could happen? The bar's quiet, but the undercurrent of violence is palpable. And then, just as you're about to make your move, the door swings open with a violent crash. You freeze. The wind from outside cuts through the stale air, and there they are. 8 Navy SEALs. The moment those doors slam open, the energy in the room shifts. It's not just the sound of the hinges or the rush of cool air, it's the sheer presence of the 8 men who step inside. They don't just walk into the bar, they command it. There's a discipline in their movements, a collective calm that contrasts sharply with the chaotic, brash energy of the gangsters. You can almost feel the weight of their training, like a tangible force in the air, and the gangsters immediately register it. They stop mid-laugh, confused at first. One of the men, a tall figure in dark tactical gear, surveys the room. His eyes flicker toward the disabled woman, then over to the group of bullies surrounding her. There's no panic in his gaze, just focused assessment. The other SEALs fan out behind him, a silent but unmistakable show of strength. They don't speak, not yet, but their stance alone says everything. The tension in the room is thick. The gangsters eye the newcomers, sizing them up. They're clearly not afraid to throw their weight around, but there's a flicker of doubt in their eyes. They weren't expecting this, and for a brief second you can see the calculation behind their eyes as they wonder if they've just picked the wrong fight. One of the gangsters, a burly man with a snake tattoo on his neck, steps forward, trying to regain control of the room. "You got a problem here, boys?" he sneers, his voice dripping with false bravado. His companions laugh awkwardly, trying to cover up the moment of hesitation. But the SEALs don't flinch. The silence stretches, suffocating as the two worlds collide. One side fueled by intimidation and fear, the other by something far more unsettling, the quiet, unshakable confidence of elite warriors. You watch as the SEALs subtly shift their positions, their movements calculated, but without a hint of aggression. They don't need to say a word. Their presence alone speaks volumes. Then the leader of the group steps forward, his eyes locked on the woman in the wheelchair. He doesn't address the gangsters. His gaze softens for just a moment, as though he's silently reassuring her. And then, in the same calm, composed tone he used moments before, he finally speaks. "Step away from her," he says simply. You can hear the shift in the air, the challenge. The gangsters don't back down right away. They've grown accustomed to using force to get what they want. And yet, there's something about the calm in the SEALs' eyes, something that unnerves them in a way they didn't expect. You can almost feel them wrestle with it, their fear, their pride, and their desire to not look weak in front of each other. The burly gangster with the tattoo cracks his knuckles, a dangerous glint in his eyes. He's trying to appear tough, but even as he glares at the leader of the SEALs, you see a flicker of doubt. They've crossed paths with all kinds of people before, victims, criminals, thugs, but they've never had to deal with men like this. The gang members exchange uncertain glances. They can tell this isn't just some bar brawl where fists can settle the matter. These guys aren't just here to fight, they're here to win, and not in some petty street brawl sense. They're here with a purpose, with a training that goes beyond muscle and bravado. You watch as they realize it. Slowly that bravado cracks, revealing the fear that lingers beneath. They start to second-guess themselves, hesitant to escalate, yet unsure of how to retreat without losing face. It's almost as if time itself has paused. You feel the shift in the room, the unease spreading like a virus through the gang, even as the SEALs maintain their silent, unwavering position. The gangsters may not know it yet, but they've already lost. The moment they thought they had the power, it slipped away with the arrival of these 8 warriors. And now, there's only one thing left to do: test their will to fight. One of the younger gangsters, a man barely older than a kid, looks to the burly tattooed leader for reassurance. "You sure we want to do this?" he asks nervously, glancing between the SEALs and his own crew. The older gangster glares at him, a scowl tugging at his lips. "Shut up," he mutters, clearly annoyed that his own crew might be second-guessing their decision. The tension rises again, thick and oppressive, as the SEALs wait. They aren't moving, aren't flinching. The only sound now is the faint murmur of the jukebox in the background, and the collective inhale of every person in the room, caught in this suspended moment of what could become a fight, or something much more serious. The burly gangster steps back, then another, and then the rest of the gang. It's like watching a slow-motion retreat. One by one, they start to break formation, trying to save face as they do. But the SEALs don't press. They don't need to. The gangsters are already defeated by the SEALs' quiet dominance. You realize something in that moment. The conflict is already over. The SEALs didn't need to lift a finger, didn't need to throw a punch. They just needed to show up. The gangsters have started backing off, but the standoff isn't over yet. There's a quiet murmur in the bar, as if everyone's still unsure whether the tension will snap back into violence. You can see it in the faces of the remaining bullies, the way their eyes dart around, looking for some kind of escape. They don't know how to react. The SEALs have turned the tables, but it's not just about physical strength. It's about something deeper, something intangible that the gangsters can't match. You hold your breath as one of the men who had been closest to the disabled woman moves toward the door, still unsure whether he's making the right move. He's not a leader, he's just a guy caught up in the mess. The SEALs don't move, not yet. They remain calm and composed, like the storm that waits for the right moment to break. Suddenly, the door to the bar slams open again. The wind cuts across the room and a figure steps inside, a man who you instantly recognize. It's one of the gangsters' higher-ups. He's wearing a leather jacket and a sharp, hard look. His eyes scan the room quickly, taking in the scene before him. His jaw tightens as he sees his men starting to retreat. The leader of the SEALs steps forward. There's no hesitation in his movements, no second thoughts. The newcomer doesn't even get a word out before the SEALs have locked onto him. The gang boss takes a moment to size them up, but even from across the room, you can tell he's already calculating his next move. He's used to running things, used to being the one who commands the room, but the SEALs don't care about his reputation. "What's going on here?" The gangster demands, his voice cold but strained. "You punks think you can take over my turf?" The SEAL leader doesn't flinch. He doesn't even look at the gang boss directly. He merely glances at his men, then back to the retreating gangsters. "No one's taking anything over. We're just here to make sure she's okay," he says, pointing briefly toward the woman still sitting in the wheelchair. Her eyes flicker up, meeting the SEAL's gaze with a mixture of confusion and relief. You can see it in the woman's face. She's just beginning to realize that the nightmare she's been living is finally starting to fade. But the gang boss isn't ready to back down just yet. He's not done with this fight. And even though his men are visibly shaken, the leader holds on to his last shred of defiance. He takes a step forward, his boots echoing on the cracked wooden floor, and raises his chin slightly. "This isn't your fight," he says, voice lowering with a hint of menace. "You don't know who I am." The SEAL leader doesn't flinch. He keeps his eyes locked on the man's face, no emotion playing across his features. "Doesn't matter who you are. You don't get to hurt people who can't defend themselves." You hear the words, and something inside you shifts. It's not about the fighting, the power struggle, or the gang's reputation. It's about something much more elemental, the unspoken honor, the kind of moral compass that only veterans seem to possess. The SEALs aren't fighting for territory or dominance. They're here for a much simpler reason, to stand up for the powerless. The room is heavy with the weight of their words. The gang boss pauses, realizing that what he's up against isn't just the threat of physical violence. It's a system of values that he can't break. And in that moment, he knows that the SEALs have already won. He's already lost control of the situation, not because his men aren't tough, but because they don't have the same kind of strength, the strength to protect those who can't protect themselves. The woman in the wheelchair, still trembling, takes a breath. You can see the shift in her posture as the tension fades from her shoulders. It's not a huge change, but it's there, just the slightest easing, as though she's realizing that the nightmare she's been living has finally come to an end. For a few seconds, no one moves. The tension lingers, but it's different now. It's not violent tension. It's the kind of silence you get before a storm, just before it clears. And then, with a final defiant glance at the SEALs, the gang boss turns and walks toward the door. His men follow suit, clearly unwilling to argue with what they now know is an unbeatable force. You watch as the gangsters leave, feeling something shift inside you. It's not victory you feel, not in the traditional sense. It's more like a quiet relief, a sense that justice in its own way has been served. The woman is safe, the bullies are gone, and the SEALs have shown everyone in the room what true strength really looks like. The gang is gone now. The bar feels quieter somehow, but it's a peaceful quiet. You hear the low murmur of conversation resuming, the sound of chairs scraping back into place, and the soft clink of glasses. It's like the atmosphere is slowly returning to normal, but with a new undercurrent to it. A sense of respect for what just happened. One of the SEALs walks over to the woman. He bends down to her level, offering a reassuring smile. "You okay?" he asks gently, his tone soft, even though the rest of his body is still coiled with readiness. The woman nods slowly, still unsure of the reality of what just happened. She seems almost in disbelief, as though she can't quite understand why or how the SEALs had come to her rescue. But the answer is simple, really. They were there because it was the right thing to do. Because it was their duty, even if it wasn't a battle they had signed up for. The SEAL leader turns to the rest of the group. He gives them a nod, and one by one they begin to file out of the bar, leaving the rest of the room in stunned silence. As the last of the SEALs exit the bar, the air in the room seems to exhale along with them. It's like the collective tension that had been stifling the space, choking every breath, is finally released. People begin to speak again, but their words are quieter now, hushed, as though they're in awe of what they just witnessed. You notice a few heads turning toward the exit, watching the SEALs disappear into the night, as though trying to process what just unfolded. For the first time in a long while, the bar seems almost peaceful. You catch the woman's eyes once more. She's still sitting in her wheelchair, her hands now steady, her gaze clear, though her face is still in a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. She didn't just witness a fight. She witnessed a moment of pure protection, the kind that many only dream of in the dark, desperate corners of their lives. You can see that she's slowly coming to terms with what just happened. This wasn't some small incident. It wasn't a local squabble that would fade with the night. This was something different. The people in the bar slowly begin to gather around her, offering quiet support, a few tentative hands resting on her shoulder. They're all trying to offer comfort, but it's almost as if they're still processing the events as much as she is. They're not sure whether they should celebrate, whether they should thank the SEALs, or just keep their distance. But the woman, though shaken, manages a small, uncertain smile. You can see the relief in her eyes, though she's still unsure about how to feel. It's a complex mix of fear, gratitude, and something like amazement. And a little bit of disbelief that she didn't just witness a fight, she witnessed a rescue, an intervention by those who would stand against the odds without a second thought. For the first time in what seems like forever, the room is united, not in fear, but in something else. It's hard to put a name to, but you feel it settle like a warm blanket. There's something about the way the SEALs carried themselves, how they didn't demand respect, but earned it simply by showing up and doing what they do best. They didn't need to speak loudly or threaten to make their point. Their very presence shifted the power dynamic in the room, and it did so with a quiet but powerful strength. The woman's voice breaks the silence, her voice still shaky but steadier now. I don't know how to thank you, she says, her eyes searching for the right words. I thought no one was going to help me. I thought I was just going to be left here. The words trail off, but the meaning behind them is clear. She had felt helpless, abandoned by the world, with nowhere to turn. For her, those moments of bullying, the cruel remarks and harsh physical pushes were just another chapter in a life where she had learned to brace herself for the worst. But the SEALs had changed that. They had proven her wrong. They had shown her that there are still people in the world who will step into the line of fire for the helpless, the vulnerable, even when they have no reason to do so. One of the patrons, an older man sitting at the bar, raises his glass and nods in the woman's direction. You don't need to thank them, he says gruffly, though there's a soft undertone to his words. They're not the kind of men who want thanks. They just do what they do. He pauses, his expression unreadable. But you're safe now. That's what matters. There's a murmur of agreement from the rest of the bar. It's a simple truth, but one that feels heavier in this moment. The SEALs didn't step in for any fanfare, any recognition. They stepped in because it was right. It was their duty. In a world where so many are quick to turn a blind eye to injustice, they were the exception, the ones who would never look away. You're starting to understand that now, the kind of men they are. But then, the conversation takes an unexpected turn. The younger man who had hesitated earlier, the one who had questioned whether the gang should really escalate things, now approaches the woman. His face is less hardened, more thoughtful than when he'd first entered. Hey, he says softly, eyes scanning the floor nervously before meeting her gaze. I want you to know that I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't want things to go this far. The woman blinks in surprise. You didn't? She asks, her voice soft, uncertain. The young man shakes his head. No, I didn't. I'm sorry. For everything. He looks toward the door as if he's trying to make sense of it all, then turns back to her. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't know what else to do. There's a moment of silence between them. For a split second, you can see the woman wrestling with the idea of forgiveness, wondering whether it's even possible after what's happened. But there's something in his eyes, genuine regret, that seems to ease the edge of her anger. Slowly she nods, a small but meaningful gesture. Thank you, she says softly. And for the first time in this entire ordeal, you realize that there's something about that simple phrase that resonates on a deeper level. Not just the words themselves, but the understanding behind them. She's not thanking him for his actions, but for his change of heart, for the fact that he could see beyond the violence and recognize the human cost. As the evening wears on, the mood in the bar gradually shifts from one of tension to one of reflection. There's still a sense of lingering shock, but it's now mixed with something else, a feeling of connection. People begin to speak more freely, share more openly. They start to process the weight of what happened, but also the larger implications of it. The woman is safe. The gangsters are gone. And in the midst of it all, something as simple as courage, simple yet so rare, has redefined the moment. There's no grand gesture needed to drive home the point. The SEALs didn't come in like heroes. They didn't demand applause. They just did what needed to be done. And that perhaps is the greatest heroism of all. As the hours pass, the quiet murmur of conversation fills the bar, but there's an undercurrent of something more powerful, something that goes beyond words. You can feel it in the way people look at each other now. The atmosphere has changed. The gangsters may have left, but their presence lingers, leaving behind a sense of fragility that nobody had realized was there before. The woman is still here, still in her wheelchair, but now she's surrounded by an invisible shield of something different, something stronger than fear. It's the kind of protection that comes from knowing you're not alone. The older man at the bar, the one who'd spoken earlier, leans over toward you, catching your attention. "You know," he says quietly, his voice low as though he's choosing his words carefully, "this kind of thing, it doesn't just happen overnight. You don't see this often, not anymore." He pauses, watching the woman as she talks with the younger man, the one who had shown regret. You think the world's gone soft, that nobody's out there fighting for the right thing, but then you see something like this, and it's a wake-up call. You don't respond at first. The truth of his words sits heavily in the air, and you don't want to break the moment. He's right, though. This wasn't just about the SEALs stepping in for a disabled woman. It was about something bigger. Something many people have forgotten or lost sight of in a world filled with noise, distractions, and self-interest. The lesson here isn't about the fight or the victory. It's about the willingness to do what's right, regardless of the cost. The younger man who had apologized to the woman slowly makes his way toward the door. He hesitates, glancing back once more at the woman, and then the rest of the bar. His eyes linger on the empty chair where the SEALs had sat moments before, and you can see it in his face, a kind of quiet respect. He doesn't say anything more, but the look in his eyes speaks volumes. Whatever he was before, he won't be that person anymore. Something about tonight changed him, made him see the world differently. You don't know if it was the intervention of the SEALs or the way the woman had looked at him with a sense of understanding, but he's not the same man who walked in here hours ago. You turn back to the woman in the wheelchair. She's speaking quietly with one of the older patrons, her hands resting in her lap, but her posture is different now. You can tell she feels lighter somehow. The lines of tension that had drawn her body tight earlier are now gone. She's not completely healed from the trauma she's experienced, not in this one night, but something within her has shifted. Her world no longer feels as dark and oppressive as it once did. There's hope now, where there was once only fear. You notice a few others in the bar watching her, almost in reverence. The regulars who had once looked away when trouble started are now standing a little taller. They're talking to her, checking on her, offering support in small, quiet ways. There's a subtle shift in the way everyone moves, like the group dynamic has changed, transformed by the actions of a few men who showed up, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. That's the thing about honor and courage. It's not about the big headlines or applause. It's about the quiet moments, the ones that don't make it to the news or social media. It's the actions that happen when nobody is watching, when you're not trying to prove anything. That's what makes those moments stick with you. You can't forget the way the SEALs just were in the room, how they didn't need to shout or swing fists to make their point. They simply acted with integrity, and that was all it took to stop a room full of bullies in their tracks. You glance at the door again, as though expecting the SEALs to walk back through it. But they don't. They don't need to. Their job is done. The woman is safe. The rest is up to the community, to the people who witnessed the event, to carry that lesson forward. You wonder how long this feeling will last, the sense of connection and strength in the room. How long will it take for everyone to go back to their lives, their routines, and forget the lessons learned tonight? Will they remember this moment, or will it be swept away by the tide of daily life? You hope it sticks, at least for a while. The older man from earlier turns to you, his eyes still on the woman. You know, veterans like them don't always get the credit they deserve. Everyone talks about the battles they fought overseas, but what they did tonight, that's the kind of battle that never gets recognized. He shakes his head slowly. The world could use a little more of that. More people stepping up to protect those who can't protect themselves. You nod, but there's nothing you can say to that. There's nothing more to add. What happened tonight isn't about words or arguments. It's about understanding something deeper, something that goes beyond military training and honor. It's about recognizing the value of protecting the vulnerable, of standing up when others don't. And in that, there's a kind of heroism that transcends the usual definitions of bravery. As you gather your things to leave, you catch a final glimpse of the woman, still talking with the others. She's not alone anymore. And maybe that's the real victory here. Not just the physical safety, but the emotional support that follows in the wake of what happened. She won't go back to feeling invisible. She won't go back to feeling weak. Tonight, she learned that there are people who will stand in the gap for her, no matter what. And for you, that's the part of the story that stays with you the longest. The night wears on, and the bar starts to empty, leaving behind the quiet hum of late-night conversations and the soft clinking of glass. You step outside, the cool air hitting your face like a rush of reality. It feels different now, calmer somehow. The neighborhood feels quieter, the city lights distant, almost serene in comparison to the storm of chaos that had filled the bar earlier. But in the back of your mind, the events of the evening play on repeat. The gangsters, the disabled woman, the SEALs. You can still see the way those men moved through the room, the way they didn't need to yell or swing punches to command attention. It wasn't just physical power that made them stand out. It was the quiet assurance that came with their discipline, their resolve, their unwavering sense of duty. You find yourself thinking about what that woman must feel now. Safe, yes, but more than that. For the first time in who knows how long, she isn't afraid. She's no longer trapped in the cycle of fear and isolation, a cycle that so many others in the world are stuck in, unable to break free. She can breathe easier, even if just for tonight. But what happens tomorrow? And the next day? Does she go back to feeling like an outsider in a world that often overlooks those with disabilities, those who need help but can't always ask for it? That's the thing, isn't it? It's not just about moments like tonight, when everything aligns and people step up in the face of injustice. It's about how that moment ripples outward. Will it change the way this woman moves through the world now? Will it change how others see her and the vulnerable in general? Will it inspire someone else to act when they see someone else being bullied or mistreated? It's easy to think that the impact of tonight ends when the SEALs walk out the door and the gangsters retreat. But it doesn't. Not really. It lingers in the people who witnessed it, the bystanders who saw something extraordinary, who now understand what it means to stand up for someone when the world tries to tear them down. The woman in the wheelchair, she'll go home tonight, hopefully in peace, and find comfort in the idea that not everyone in this world is willing to turn a blind eye. She'll know, deep down, that there are still people out there who will stand up for the helpless. And maybe, just maybe, that knowledge will start to heal some of the wounds she's carried, the wounds that came from years of feeling forgotten, left out, or even hated for simply being different. But what about the rest of the world? What about the people who weren't there to witness the events of the night? Will they ever know what happened? Will they understand the importance of these moments, of the courage it takes to be a hero in the simplest of ways? There's a ripple effect to courage, to kindness. It doesn't just stop when the conflict ends. It spreads, silently at first, but it spreads. The SEALs didn't just intervene in a moment of crisis. They planted a seed. They reminded everyone in that bar of something fundamental, that protecting others, especially the vulnerable, is not only possible, but necessary. You can't help but think about what you've learned tonight. It wasn't just about the right time and place for a fight. It wasn't about who was tougher, who had the biggest presence, or who could intimidate the most. It was about being present in the moment. It was about having the courage to act, to defend, to protect. There's no flashy heroism here. No one will write books about tonight. No one will get a medal for stepping into that bar and saying enough. But that's what makes it so significant. This wasn't about seeking recognition. This was about doing what needed to be done. There's a line from an old story you've heard somewhere, one that's echoed in your mind tonight. The greatest warriors aren't the ones who fight battles. They're the ones who protect those who can't fight for themselves. That's what tonight was about. It wasn't about the confrontation with the gangsters. It was about the protection, the strength to stand in the way of harm and say, "Not here." not now. As you walk down the street, the cool breeze still biting at your skin, you reflect on the night with a deep sense of appreciation. The world often feels full of noise, of division, of people turning away from the suffering of others. But tonight, you witnessed something different. You saw people stand up for what was right, not because they wanted recognition, not because it was easy, but because they knew it was the only thing that could be done. There are heroes out there, and sometimes they don't wear capes. They don't appear on the cover of magazines. Sometimes they just walk into a bar, stand up for the powerless, and then walk out again without so much as a word. And in doing so, they change everything. You'll remember tonight, not just because of the dramatic confrontation, but because it was a reminder that real strength comes from protecting others. It comes from standing tall when everyone else is too afraid to even look. The next morning, the woman will wake up in her own bed, free from the fear that once gripped her. But the real test will come when she steps back out into the world. Will the seed that was planted by the seals take root? Will it inspire her to stand up for herself in new ways, to ask for help when she needs it, to know that she deserves kindness and respect just as much as anyone else? Will it make the people around her take notice, change their behaviors, and begin to stand up for others who can't fight back? One thing is certain, tonight something changed, and that change is not something easily undone.